They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but what is a reflection worth? And what happens when it, and then your shadow, and then your very voice, decides to leave? Welcome, seekers of the shadowed page, to the Unveiled Scroll. We are the guardians of stories that rustle in the margins of history, the whispers that academics dismiss and time tries to forget. If you believe the past is never truly dead, and if you wish to help us unearth these forbidden tales, do press that like button, subscribe to our archive, and share this chronicle with those who dare to look into the dark. Tonight, we journey to a place erased by cartographers, but etched into the memory of the land itself. We speak of a tragedy, not of plague or war, but of an existential theft. We bring you the chiaroscuro lamento vallis. Our story begins not with a map, for no map drawn after 1658 bears its name, but with a single, terrified document. The journal of Father Allah. He was a man of devout faith sent by a distant diocese to minister to a valley so remote, so tucked within the unforgiving peaks of a nameless mountain range that it was said the sun only grazed its ridges for an hour at noon. Valle Sombria de Shadowy Valley. It was a name Alarico wrote that was perhaps less a description and more a prophecy. He arrived in the late autumn of 1657, a time when the world was awash in the harsh light of reason and the deep shadows of superstition. The Baroque era was in full flourish, a time of dramatic, emotional art, of intense conflict between light and dark. This aesthetic, this obsession with chiaroscuro, would become the very canvas of the tragedy. Alarico's first entries are mundane, notes on the harvest, the hardy, quiet nature of the villagers, the unsettling silence of the valley. The air, he noted, was heavy, not with moisture, but with an absence of sound. The people were pious, but their prayers felt hollow, as if the words were stolen by the wind the moment they left their lips. The first sign was subtle. He recounts visiting the home of Ilara, a weaver, to bless her newborn child. As he performed the rite, he glanced at the babe's reflection in a polished pewter plate on the wall. The plate reflected the candle, his own face, the worried visage of the mother. But the swaddled infant, sleeping peacefully in her arms, cast no imagen. He blinked, attributing it to a trick of the low light, a flaw in the metal. He wrote, "My eyes must be weary from the road. I saw only a void where the child should be." But the weariness did not pass. Weeks later, he was speaking with the blacksmith, a man of immense physical presence, named Balthazar. They stood in the weak, midday sun. Alarico, noting the angle of the light, cast a long shadow. Balthazar, standing right beside him, cast none. The blacksmith, seemingly unaware, continued to speak of mending the church bell, but his voice, Alarico realized, was thin, lacking resonance, like a bell that was cracked. This was not a plague. There was no fever, no pox, no blood. This was an emptying. Hollowy. The affliction spread, not like fire, but like a stain. It began with the reflections. The children who used to play by the still, black pool at the valley's edge stopped. They would peer into the water and see only the sky, the mountains, and the empty space where their own faces should have been. They did not cry. They simply stopped. They would sit for hours, staring at their own hands, as if trying to remember what they were for. Then came the shadows. The very proof of one's existence, the dark twin tethered to the heel, began to detach. Villagers would walk through the cobbled square, their bodies solid, but leaving no imprint of darkness behind them. They became figures in a poorly rendered painting, flat, disconnected from the earth. Alarico wrote, "It is as if God has turned his lamp away from us, and we are no longer substantial enough to block the light." The valley descended into a quiet, creeping madness. The trauma was not loud. It was profoundly silent. The loss of shadow was followed by the fading of color, the vibrant dyes of Alara's tapestries, the ruddy health in the villagers' cheeks. The green of the pines all seemed to drain away, leaving the world in a muted palette of gray and brown. The world was becoming a sketch, an unfinished thought. Father Alarico was a man of faith, a soldier of God. He did what he was trained to do, He prayed. He fasted. He performed the rite of exorcism over the entire valley, his voice echoing against the cliffs, the Latin phrases sounding brittle and small. But the entity he faced was not a demon. A demon has form, intent, a name. This was an absence, a void. How does one fight nothing? His conflict, documented in his desperate, spidery script, is the heart of our tragedy. I preach of the soul, he wrote one night, the inkblots attesting to his trembling hand. But what is the soul if not the reflection of God? If our own reflection flees, has God looked away? Or have we become so hollow that his light passes directly through us? He tried to find a rational explanation. Was it the water? A fungus on the rye? Mass hysteria, but these explanations crumbled. A fungus does not steal a shadow. Hysteria does not erase a reflection from a mirror. He felt his own faith beginning to fray. He was a man of light, of Baroque certainty, trapped in a world that was dissolving into a terrifying, minimalist void. The true horror, the chiaroscuro lament, had not yet reached its crescendo. The final stage began on the first day of winter. Silence. It was not the mere absence of sound he'd first noted. It was an active, oppressive silencing. The villagers, one by one, lost their voices. Not to sickness, but to ... subtraction. They would open their mouths to speak, to scream, to pray, and no sound would emerge. The blacksmith could swing his hammer, and it would strike the anvil with a dull, muffled thud, as if the metal itself were made of felt. The church bell, which Alarico desperately tried to ring, gave only a dead, wooden click. The lament was not a sound, but the abject loss of it. The valley was now populated by silent, shadowless, reflectionless figures, their colors muted, their actions slow and pointless. They would gather in the square, not speaking, not even looking at each other, just existing in a shared, empty space. They were ghosts trapped in their own living bodies. Alarico, isolated, became the lone historian of the apocalypse. He describes his own terror as he, too, began to change. I preached that the Word was God. Now, the Word is gone. The birds do not sing. The wind does not howl. My own footsteps are silent on the stone. The world has become a tapestry, and the threads are being pulled out, one by one. I am alone in the unmaking. His own psychological state deteriorated. He became obsessed with light. He lit every candle in the church, creating a blazing island of light in the silent darkness. Desperate to cast a shadow, to prove his own substance, he would spend hours staring into the communion chalice, a silver cup, praying to see his own face. Day 54 of the silence. I spoke the Mass today. My mouth moved. The rituals were correct, but no sound came. The congregation was present. I think they sit in the pews, these pale, silent things. Are they still human? Am I? He began to suspect a different culprit. Not a demon, nor a disease, but the valley itself. He theorized that the valley, so isolated, so forgotten by the world, had perhaps developed its own hunger. An ancient, nameless god of emptiness that resented the noise, the color, the substance of humanity. We did not anger God, he wrote. We merely moved into a space that was already occupied by its opposite. We are too loud, too bright, too real for this place. And it is correcting us. It is not killing us. It is editing us. The final entry in the Alarico Codex is almost illegible. It is not written in ink, but seems to have been scratched into the parchment with a sharpened piece of charcoal. It is done. I held the silver chalice to my face. The candlelight shone upon it. I saw the curve of the metal. I saw the reflection of the candles on the altar. But between them, where my face should have been, ... Nothing. A smooth, silver, empty curve. My reflection is gone. I checked the floor. My shadow, My shadow is gone. I'm trying to scream as I write this. I can feel the muscles in my throat straining, my jaw aching, but the silence is absolute. I am a hollow man. We are the hollow men. The lament is complete. We are the light, the shadow. We are the canvas. ... And we have been painted ... over. The codex ends there. What happened next has left a history's silence. For a century, Valle Sombria ceased to exist. Trade routes shifted. The world forgot the small, inaccessible valley. It was not rediscovered until 1788 by a team of surveyors charting the mountains for a new border. They found the valley. The village was intact. The houses stood, the church doors were open, but it was empty. Utterly, perfectly empty. There were no bodies, no signs of struggle, no graves, no skeletons. The tools in the blacksmith's shop were tidy. The tapestries in Alara's home were half finished on the loom. Their colors faded to a uniform, ghostly gray. The only thing of note was the journal of Father Alari resting open on the church altar, its final, scratched words exposed to the elements. The official report filed by the surveyors is a masterpiece of bureaucratic dismissal. They concluded the villagers had simply ... left, that they had abandoned the valley for better lands, taking their dead, their shadows, and their voices with them. The valley was declared inhospitable and, for a second time, stricken from the maps. But the Alarico Codex survived. It was passed down, sold, hidden, dismissed as a work of fiction, a Gothic fancy written by a mad priest. But here, at the Unveiled Scroll, we hold such testaments sacred. We look at the details the surveyors missed, the utter lack of decay, the impossible preservation of the empty village, the local legends from other nearby valleys that still speak of the silent folk, the pale, shadowless beings that are sometimes seen on the ridges at twilight, watching the colorful, noisy world they can no longer be a part of. Was this a localized plague? A mass psychosis, born of isolation and sensory deprivation? Was Father Alarico a victim of his own Baroque imagination, imposing his era's obsession with light and shadow onto a simple, grim reality? Or was Valle Sombria a thin place, a place where the veil between substance and nothingness is so frayed that a community, forgotten by the world, simply unraveled? We cannot know. The chiaroscuro lament remains a footnote in a forgotten language, a story told only in whispers. It is a stark reminder that the greatest horrors are not always the ones that scream and bleed, but the ones that silently erase, the ones that leave you hollow. And so, Valle Sombria remains, a hollow in the map, its silence, a monument to the unexplained. The Alarico Codex rests in a private collection, its brittle pages unstudied, dismissed as the ravings of a mind broken by isolation. But we, the keepers of the Unveiled Scroll, ask you, was it madness, or was it an encounter with a void that waits patiently for us to forget who we are? Look closely in the mirror tonight. Make sure your reflection looks back. We have countless other scrolls to unfurl, other forgotten histories waiting in the gloom, such as the tale of the Whispering Library or the phantom fleet of the Salted Graves. Until next time, remain curious and question the shadows.